Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Big Future. I'm Brian Wang. I'm going to talk about how Teslabot Earth abundance would also mean Mars abundance as well. So Elon has talked about his Mars plans. He updated the Mars plan and his Teslabot plans in an interview with Chris Anderson of TED. And so let's first review the update that Elon gave, and then why that means that there will also be abundance and comfort on Mars and a radically larger plan for Mars than what's currently being discussed, even the large plans that Elon Musk has. So Elon talked about 1 million people on Mars and creating a self-sustaining economy there in order to make humanity truly multiplanetary, where you have Earth surviving and Mars surviving, and if either one got taken out, the other could continue. He indicated that the life on Mars would be difficult, it'd be hard, but glorious. And he talked about first people perhaps going in 2029. You'd have first flight of Starship this year to orbit, and then uncrewed missions 2025, 2027. And he compares the early life on Mars to Antarctica, or perhaps the first early US colonies, which some of those didn't survive and was difficult. He also talked about Teslabot plans. He wants to have an interesting prototype this year, and he would show that off, and then be limited mass production, and the bots would be useful either next year or the year after, and become more and more useful. The usefulness will scale up, the cost will come down, and the scaling of production will scale up. Cost would be about a cheap car, or perhaps less. And then within a decade, so 2032, it would be commercial for homes and businesses at some point between 2024 and 2032. Certainly a useful bot would have certain economics and become commercial in a niche form, but broadly commercial, perhaps getting to a bot in every home or on the path to that by 2032. And he also described this would mean abundance for Earth. He didn't imply Earth, but he just said in general, this would mean abundance for all people for the future at some point, perhaps not right away, but in the decades that follow. But Teslabot Earth abundance also means Teslabot Mars abundance. And this is what I'm going to be going over here, how the numbers and the various aspect of this would mean an abundant Mars. So by 2030, when we start sending things in scale, either people or supplies, number of starships, by 2030, advanced Teslabots will exist. And you can then scale up to have 10 to 100 Teslabots per Mars colonist. This would make Mars comfortable and safe. It would also increase the pool of Earthers willing to go to Mars. Elon Musk talked about the intersection of perhaps 1 million people. Only some people will want to go to Mars, but that's only if Mars is a harsh environment. California and Oregon were part of the Wild West, and it was difficult. Only the hardy would go there. But it became very comfortable and attracted far more people to those previously frontier places. So I would say that Mars will not be Antarctica hard, but a land of opportunity and relative comfort. So Tesla and SpaceX in 2022. There are now 4 Tesla Gigafactories, 2 just recently opened up, 1 in Austin, 1 in Berlin, and perhaps there'll be 2 million cars produced this year. And there's 60 Falcon 9 launches this year for SpaceX. And we said, the first Teslabot demo next year and some limited mass production next year. The first Super Heavy Starship will go to orbit later this year, perhaps in a few months. And there is a factory for 1,000 Raptor engines per year, which could make a Super Heavy Starship stack once every 2 weeks. And if you have more starships, the upper stage than the boosters, you could perhaps have 100 um, starships and 2 to 4 boosters that could be reused more frequently and support more of the upper stages. So Tesla and SpaceX 2030, Elon has talked recently about opening perhaps 10 more Tesla Gigafactories. So then you have 14 Tesla Gigafactories, perhaps 20 million cars per year. The launches would increase to 10,000 or more because a fully reusable Starship could be flown multiple times per day. And if you have a fleet of them, each one could fly 1,000 times a year. And a whole fleet of them might fly, if you have 1,000 of them, then you could have 1 million flights per year. And if you have 10,000, you'd have 10 million flights. And then we'd be on to perhaps version 8 of the Teslabot and perhaps 2 dedicated Teslabot factories. So it's not unreasonable case by 2030s. The Generation 2 Starlink satellite, which has already been filed with the SEC, would have 30,000 satellites up for 200 million subscribers by 2026. Perhaps the Generation 3 satellite with 120,000 satellites up there for 1 billion subscribers. 1 billion subscribers at $1,000 per year. That's $1 trillion per year of revenue. And a lot of that would be super high margin. 20 million cars for Tesla per year, on track to producing a significant fraction of the 300 terawatts for full conversion of transportation energy to electric economy. So SpaceX and Tesla, each approximately 100 times bigger than now, is a very possible look at how things would be moving forward. And we'd have useful Teslabots because we're looking at useful Teslabots by 2024, very useful Teslabots by 2030 for the first flights to Mars, in first flights in significant volume. And then SpaceX making a fleet of 1,000 super heavy starships, the cost could drop down to about $10 million per Starship. So then 1,000 would be $10 billion, which if SpaceX and Tesla are 100 times larger than today, $100 trillion companies, then that's highly affordable for them. If you have $100 billion in income, $10 million is something that's highly affordable. The Teslabots, we have 20 times fewer batteries than a car. So a car has about 60 kilowatt hours. The Teslabot has about 3 kilowatt hours. So 20 times fewer batteries. Teslabot mass is about 50 kilograms. And the mass of a car is about 40 times more, a Model Y about 40 times more. So if the costs were tracking to the materials, which they may not sell for that, the cost for they sell may be higher, but if for Tesla and SpaceX plans, they could factor in more based on the cost because they have to charge a profit per se. So if you could buy 2 Model Ys, you could perhaps get 50 Teslabots for the same amount of money. If it's a more expensive cheap car costs, then roughly cheap car, perhaps 8 bots to 2 Model Ys. So roughly those scales where basically you can get more bots than cars. A staff of a wealthy estate, millionaire, billionaires, whatever that, with a huge mansion, your Downton Abbey scenarios, roughly 20 to 100 staff. So this is the case that if you have a bot able to do certain capabilities of some people, then it would not be inconceivable that you have the kind of abundance lifestyle where basically everyone has many bot servants, which goes to, if I can afford 2 cars, Model Ys, I can afford 16 to 100 Tesla bots to do work, and they can do very useful work. So it'd be bots for everyone on Earth and on Mars. And you can send 4 million Teslabots in your fleet of 1,000 Starships. So Elon's talked about sending a fleet of 1,000 Starships every 2 years, the launch window, to Mars and carrying perhaps 100 or more human colonists per Starship. But if you had dedicated Teslabots, you could, based on the mass and compacting them into, having them all fold up to the smallest volume, you could send 4,000 per Starship. So that's about 4 million Teslabots they could send. And there's 19,000 workers in the Gigafactory Shanghai. So that productivity could get to those number of workers could produce 2 million cars per year, or perhaps 100 million Teslabots in a fully dedicated, similar scale Teslabot Gigafactory. So one thing you want to do is to make Mars independent. Elon talks about making Mars self-sustaining, is it has to have its own gigafactories. And also that could be a way to make it very profitable and useful, and a way to stage out production from Mars to the asteroid belt for mining and for other purposes. So each gigapress weighs 410 to 430 tons. So you'd either have to increase the payload capacity of your Starship to carry 400 tons all in one go, or you break it up into 4 pieces, take certain components and then put the 4 pieces back together, or you make a slightly lighter version of the gigapress for Mars launch and delivery. You have 700 factory bots inside a gigafactory. It looks like they're about the same scale of a car, also metal, so perhaps 1 to 2 tons each. And they have other components of the gigafactory, but you can take them, the equipment and the gear, build the building on Mars, and then have a gigafactory there. And then similarly, your mass production of Raptor engines and your Starship construction facilities could also be replicated on Mars. So roughly 30 launches for one gigafactory, plus 5 launches if each Teslabot could replace each human worker, to say how much it take to send a gigafactory. So if you have parts Tesla automation, 5 Teslabot and 1 human workers, have 4,000 humans instead of 20,000 to staff the gigafactory. 10 Teslabots for 1 human worker, then 2,000 humans to 20,000 Teslabots, or 20 Teslabots for 1 human worker, 1,000 humans, 20,000 Teslabots. Just rough conversions based upon how many humans could oversee certain Teslabots to more automate a gigafactory. Also, a gigafactory would need a supply chain that you have to replicate and localize to Mars. So you have to have roughly 5 times the entire gigafactory staff and capabilities for have a full battery supply chain, mining, refining, cell to pack, and use perhaps, and perhaps 10 times that for an entire car supply chain. Anything that's complicated as a car, end to end. The chips, et cetera, probably the fabs being one of the major things, the fabs for the chips. So the world has about 35,000 large passenger jets now. And a fully reusable rocket can replace those things for cargo delivery and then air travel. I have a video that describes my case for how that can be done. And then the amount of traffic people have projected would increase to the need for 100,000 of those. So if SpaceX is able to displace cargo and then human travel in a significant way, then there could be the case for a fleet of 10,000 Starships per year to build that out. And SpaceX already is building out Starship engine capacity for 100 Starships per year. And as we said, by 2030 and beyond, the company is 100 times bigger. So the 10,000 case, 100 times 100 is 10,000. So the case for very large fleets, even larger than what Elon has talked about, the 1,000 per flight could be achievable. So if you send 10,000 Starships to Mars, 200 ships per gigafactory and supply chain, 1,000 Starships per 4 million Teslabots, 1,000 Starship launches per 5 complete gigafactories and the mining and processing. So you can send 40 million bots and 40 gigafactories and the mining and 100,000 humans in a fleet of 10,000 to Mars. This still scales down. You can, if you end up with less, 1,000 Starships, you can still send 4 million bots, 4 gigafactories, and mining, and 10,000 humans, right? So still plenty once you have the large scale. So the first Mars gigafactory capabilities, you'd want to process fuel from the atmosphere, which you can pull the methane out of the air. You can get the oxygen. These are simple chemical processes. Get water. There's the frozen oceans in the Mars soil. You just heat it and get the water out. You can create food, greenhouses, etc., and cement. These are things you want to do because those things are high mass. Fuel, oxygen, water. cement. Those are high mass things. So if you can, and they're really easy to make, even on Mars. So if you make the heavy things with simple processes, then you reduce how much you have to send from Earth very quickly. You can start, reducing, 10xing what you're sending, because you're only sending the difficult to make stuff, or take out the stuff that's heavy. And then if you have mining, processing metals, then you're on the first step to industrializing Mars. And again, reducing what you have to send from Earth and making it more independent, which is one of the goals that Elon has. And then you want to be able to build, repair starships, your vehicles, the electric vehicles that were Cybertrucks, you convert into construction equipment, those versions of it. And of course, Teslabots, make more Teslabots. And maybe have the goal of having 400 bots and 5 vehicles, machines per colonist. So that would not be, you can also pre-make certain stuff, depending on how much automation you have. So then you can have a luxurious and productive Mars that attracts more colonists and more tourists. So you can build more gigafactories and bots, and this would then be this vision that SpaceX had shown a few years back, would then be the smaller case where you could get an even grander civilization on Mars. So you can start out at 40 to 400 bots per human, go up to 40,000 bots, potentially 4 billion. Because if you have a closed cycle where you have 40 gigafactories, or 40 gigafactories can produce 100 million bots each, right? So then you could rapidly get to 1 billion bots in a decade or something like that. So you can really build it out without bringing in very much more materials from Earth. Perhaps not if you close the entire loop. So you can scale human civilization with bots. You increase starship production there. You can bring more people, build up more cities and factories. 10,000 humans, 4 million bots. 1 million humans, 1 billion bots. 10 million humans, 10 billion bots. 10 billion bots. If each one has the capability of a human, you've replicated human civilization, because human civilization have about 10 million humans on Earth. So you have 100 Mars cities with 100,000 people each, and 100 million bots each. If you take the 10 million humans and 10 billion bots, just divide it up into 100 places. So each one is kind of like a mega city, Tokyo, with bots and humans. Elon's talked about 300 terawatt hours to fully convert over transportation, electricity, and heating, which is basically replacing the 1 to 2 billion cars, and the batteries to enable a large amount of solar to generate power during the day, 68 hour sunlight, and spread that out over 24/7. And Earth-sized Tesla and SpaceX focused on the economy on Mars. So then you can, so if you're generating those kind of terawatt hours, then you can easily make if you make 1 billion, Tesla makes 1 billion cars, then they can make the 10 billion Teslabots. That's again the mass conversion, the battery conversion. And that would only need 540 million tons of material versus, which is less than 1 billion cars, which would need 1 billion tons of material. So you can create an Earth-sized economy on Mars, 10 billion bots, 10 million humans. And then what would be the valuation of SpaceX and Tesla with the Mars developed? So if you're just saying the economy of Earth replicated in $100 trillion, perhaps in 2050, 2060, even 2070, it's still a huge amount. And that could be $100,000 per share, could be 100x it. If the economy is more advanced, become more abundant, then maybe that's $1,000 trillion or $1 million per share. But if you work at it from the other side, not just saying, okay, we replicate Earth, looking just in terms of scaling up Gigafactories and assume that there's demand for whatever being produced there, then we can look at, well, so let me first do a sanity check. There's 2 billion cars in the world. If you have 100% electric available, eventually the mass and production of 2 million cars equals 100 billion Teslabots. So the numbers that we're talking about here are, if you believe that all cars go electric, 100 billion Teslabot also is a similar scale effort. So you localize on Mars, Giga Shanghai now supplying battery packs to Giga Berlin until the Berlin battery factory is up. So you produce what you can on Mars and then bring only what you don't need, what you can't make by yourself. So Mars, you could create 100,000 gigafactories. If you have 10 billion bots, 10 million humans, you could create 100,000 gigafactories. Again, with 20,000 bots and humans being the production of the staff of a gigafactory. Then you have the mining and production, 10 times that people for that. So you can build starships, build vehicles, build bots, and space stations. You can build larger space stations rotating for gravity in other parts of the solar system. So you have 500 to 1,000 people per gigafactory and a supply chain. If you have $100 billion in revenue per gigafactory, which is like a 2 million car per year production, then that's 10 billion profits per year. If 10% of the profits go to the staff of that, then that'd be $1 million per year per Martian. So again, the land of opportunity in Mars, if it's, able to just build out and just make things, without bureaucratic limits. So this could be 25,000 times more than the 4 gigafactories we have today. And if the Tesla SpaceX shares scaled with the gigafactories, split between SpaceX and Tesla, both are producing things to enable this vision. And then that could be 10,000 times the share price, because if the share price scales the gigafactories, 25,000 split, 12,500 for each, roughly 10,000. So that could be, if it happened by 2062, that's 20 times per decade. If it happens 10 years later, whatever that is, 10 times growth per decade to reach 10x, 100x, 1,000x, 10,000x, in 4 decades. I think if it's a bit slower, it's still a fantastic return. If it takes, twice as long, 20 decades per 10x. SpaceX engine factories, a Merlin engine is built 1 every 2 days, but Raptor 2 is 4 per day. So all of these gigafactories are getting more productive and could be 10 times to 100 times more productive. So it wouldn't necessarily stay at the efficiency of 2 million cars per year. They would have advanced to, in the 2030s, 40s, and 50s, to even more advanced gigafactories. So here are some images of rotating large space stations, rotating to have gravity. Also, the colonization beyond Mars is that the clouds of Venus, about 30 miles up, is actually having the pressure and temperature that is Earth-like. On the surface of Venus, it's like 900 degrees Fahrenheit, like melting a lot of materials, but up in the atmosphere, it's actually colonizable. And they can make very large cylinder habitats, the O'Neill stations, previously envisioned in the 1970s. Image of that, outside view. So you can industrialize the solar system from Mars and the moon. And you might be able to 10x per decade for hundreds of years in order to fully tap into the billion times more resources of the solar system. So SpaceX and Tesla are not just generational companies, but multi-generational. And so that's a Mars civilization with Teslabots by 2050, maybe 2080 if things take longer, but you have significant progress towards that by 2050. Like even those first 20 launches from 2030 to 2050, with fleet of 1,000 to 10,000 starships, could be loading up Mars with, 1 billion Teslabots potentially, and hundreds of gigafactories, which would mean there would be something that would be generating, if Tesla and SpaceX still have producing products of demand, having that Mars production would make it a more profitable, enticing place. It would create some kind of economy. And they could then be tapping into the asteroids, which are close by to Mars, a staging point for the development of that. So that's the grand vision of that. And I'll go over, follow videos that go over this in various aspects in more detail. So thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe to Next Big Future on YouTube and support us on Patreon. And talk to you next time.